Welcome to Money Secrets with Bill and Mike.
I'm Bill Alexander.
And I'm Mike Tove. So, today we're going to have a continuation of last week. So welcome back for those of you that tuned in last week and are back with us today.
Well, last week we talked about retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, what are some of the differences and the like. But this week we want to do something a little different.
Right. We want to talk about a little bit more details about how do you use them and just where some of the nuances are.
Right. Well, it's important for folks to know when and how to take distributions, and that's what we really need to focus on today.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to be right back. We're going to take a short break and go into this. So stay tuned. Welcome back.
Well, Mike, we know that any retirement account requires a minimum required distribution, which starts at 70 and a half. We know that we can take distributions before that without a penalty after 59 and a half, but tell us the rules and how they work when you actually get to that magic age of 70.
Well, it's not 70, it's 70 and a half, and it's weird because it has to do with whether you were born in the first 6 months or the second 6 months of the year. But here is the thing, the first year of your required minimum distribution schedule is actually different from all of the others. In the first year, you can actually take it as late as April 1st of next year. All others, it's by December 31st of this year.
Okay, so you have a little flexibility the first year.
But that's a trap.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about the trap.
So the trap is twofold. First off, if you wait until next year, January 1 to April 1, to take your first minimum distribution, you're going to take two of them in the same year. And you're going to double up on how much you're reporting.
Okay.
The second one, which anybody that wants to see this in greater detail, just schedule a time, come in and we'll show you, is that there's actually a double taxation. You literally are reporting and paying income tax on some of the same dollars twice.
That's important for us to know. So the bottom line is, if you're born in the first 6 months of the year, these issues don't hit you quite as hard because your first distribution is going to be in that calendar year.
Right.
But you have until April to pay it.
Right. Well,
or take it,
no,
I should
because
say.
no, because it always is based on December 31st.
Right.
So under any circumstances, unless there's always exceptions to every rule, but under any circumstances, you should always take your first year's required minimum distribution in the same calendar year in which you turned 70 and a half.
Right.
Put another way, if you are born January through June, you will take your distribution in the same year in which you are actually 70 years old on December 31st.
Correct.
If you are born July through December, it will be the year in which you are 71 years old on December 31st.
In other words, if you're born in the second half of the year, you could take your first distribution the next year,
Right.
but you probably shouldn't.
Well, your minimum distribution isn't even calculated until the following year. So, but that's one piece of this.
Right.
The second piece is we have said this already, is that should you take only a required minimum distribution?
Well, that's the biggest mistake in my mind that most seniors make, is that they're always told only take minimum required distributions, and there are many times when that is absolutely not true.
And yes, and especially when it comes to pairing that minimum distribution with Social Security, that's where the real mistake comes in, because on the one hand, Social Security, as we have said previously, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, 8% per year, every year that you tick by up to 70.
Okay, so Social Security, how does it work with your required minimum distributions? You can take Social Security as early as 62. Widows and widowers can take it as early as 60. Full retirement age, for at least for me, would be 66,
66.
and for those coming after 1959,
50, yeah.
I believe,
Well, 59 and beyond.
and beyond is
67.
67.
Right.
And for those in between, it's basically 66 plus some months to full retirement age. But the latest is actually age 70.
Correct.
So how does that fit in with taking
Well,
distributions? Mike?
let's do it this way. I have an example, and we'll have this on the screen. But let's just assume that we have a hypothetical couple. They're Bob and Mary, and they are 65 years old. Okay? And their Social Security is going to be $3,500 a month, and they have $1,500 a month in pension, and they need $5,000 a month, or to make it annualized, $42,000 a year of Social Security, $18,000 a year of pension, and they need $60,000.
Okay, now
And-
have they made their Social Security election yet?
Well, this is where we get into this. So here's what happens. A lot of times, they just retired. So they're going, how do I live off of $1,500 a month? I can't, I need $5,000. So they look at the Social Security and they say, let's take it.
The knee jerk is, we need that money, so let's take
And
it
it
now.
works, and we'll take it. So
Right.
yes, they've got their Social Security and their pension, and now they are getting what they
Well, I
need.
suspect you're now going to tell me why that might be a mistake.
It is a mistake, and the reason it's a mistake is because if they spent the IRA down for 5 years,
In other words, they took $3,500 out of their IRA
Per
each
month.
month instead of taking their Social Security. Okay.
So here is what happens, okay? So number one, they get to age 70 and they've still got money left over, all right? They haven't spent down the whole IRA. It's smaller. But at 70 on the old schedule, their required minimum distribution is $13,980, so their total income is $73,980, of which $40,613 is taxable. Now, if you wait, you spend down the IRA, and then you let the Social Security grow, the Social Security income at 70 by waiting increases from $42,000 to $61,716.
Well, you and I both know that each year you delay taking your Social Security is a guaranteed 8% increase each year.
And the minimum distributions get smaller because you've spent it. So here's the bottom line difference. If you do it the way we're advocating, the total income increases to $84,792, and the taxable income goes down. More income, $10,812 more income, $8,093 less taxed income. Boom, it's a double benefit.
Right. So this assumes, of course, that you've retired, that you're not still
Right.
working,
Oh, yeah.
because
If
that
you're-
changes.
Oh my God! If you're working,
Right.
If you're working and you haven't reached your full retirement age, big penalty.
So this is take Social Security, don't take Social Security versus use your IRA.
Right.
But it's like everything else, it depends
depends.
on your personal circumstances.
Right. Okay. Welcome back. So Bill, you had some other ideas about why you should take it early.
Well, there are a couple reasons that can make, other than Social Security, and of course, just to sum up with Social Security, at least what I tell my clients, is that they should, in almost all situations, unless they're starving or or their health is really bad, to delay Social Security till age 70, or at least to full retirement age. But there are other reasons why you may want to take distributions early. And one reason has to do with marriage and tax rates, particularly if your spouse is frail, becoming less healthy, if you will, and you're worried about those kind of situations, because a lot of folks don't realize that the tax rates, you get a break as a married person.
yeah.
You know, at 15%, a single person, that rate goes up after $37,000, from 15 to 25%. at 25% caps out at $90,000, so it goes up to the next tax bracket. Well, if you're married, you're at the 15% bracket, up to $75,000.
Right.
You're up at the max of the 25% bracket at $156,000. So the bottom line is, if you lose your spouse, typically your taxes that you pay will go up significantly because it pushes you into a higher tax bracket. And of course, retirement income, anything you take from your retirement account is ordinary income. So the bottom line is, you can take more at a lower bracket when you're married than when you're single.
Right.
And that's something that people should factor in. Another big factor is long-term care issues. We both know that at least half of us will have a significant long-term care crisis, and we typically have to spend down or reduce our retirement accounts in order to qualify for benefits. So those are two, under some circumstances, where people should take more than their minimum required distributions, sometimes before 70, sometimes after 70 when they have required. But I know that you have a way that you can actually reduce taxes,
Right.
which most people really don't know about. Share that with us, Mike.
Right. So I want to tell a quick story. A few years ago, I was working with some IRA modeling with a limited group of products that I have access to. And I was running the minimum distribution calculations, and I was doing it on the individual company software, and I was using generic software. And the numbers should have been identical, but they weren't. And it took me about 3 months of going back and forth, making sure I wasn't making a mistake. And finally, I literally got on an airplane and I flew to the corporate headquarters of the engineering firm that designed this group of products to make sure I wasn't making a mistake. And without getting into the math and the minutia of it here, the bottom line is that there is a way of actually reducing required minimum distributions through a limited group of financial products that are ideally suited for handling IRAs. Because there's really, and I published a paper in the journal The Register, which is the journal for the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants, and in that paper I said there's basically 3 rules for an IRA surviving the schedule of minimum distributions. Rule number 1 is an IRA, once it's in minimum distributions, cannot be exposed to market losses. It just cannot. We talked about this last week, that when markets fall, the minimum distribution gets proportionally much bigger. So rule number 1, you cannot have an IRA exposed to negative markets in the minimum distribution schedule if you want it to survive. Number 2, the growth has to exceed or equal or exceed the minimum distribution load, which happens from age 70 to age 90, happens to be a little bit higher than 5 2/3% per year. If you don't have that, it's just math, you're going backwards.
No question about it.
And then 3, if you can actually reduce the required minimum distribution load, which I have access to specific IRA types of products that do this.
Well, Mike, one of the reasons, frankly, what makes you such a good financial advisor is that your advice is based on objective criteria and analysis. I've never seen you do anything without running the numbers. Right. And that makes you different, quite frankly. It's not a feeling, it's objective criteria
it's not. And
that makes a difference.
You know, and numbers don't lie.
Well, I know that what you have shared with folks today will be, folks out there, there'll be a certain number of you that will be interested in this.
Absolutely.
And I would encourage them to talk with you about it.
Now, there is a 4th criteria, and that is that if you are going to grow an IRA and keep it large, at the point of inheritance, you sure as heck don't want it being distributed in lump sum to the kids.
Well, that's for sure. And there, you know, oftentimes when kids inherit an IRA, they don't understand them, and unfortunately, they take a full distribution.
and they get
And what that
clobbered.
means is
Yes.
big taxation,
So-
and oftentimes they've already spent the money and they don't have the money to
Well,
pay the tax.
Let's take a short break, and then we're going to come back, and I want to talk about that briefly because, boy, is that almost an understatement. Stay tuned.
But the problem we see so often is that they'll take all of it as at one
Or
big distribution or
well,
a major part of it.
or they don't have a choice. The financial, I've seen them. The financial custodian just says, here's the money.
Well, in fact, you really have to watch out for that with a 401k because that's based on that custodial contract. Some require a one-time distribution and it's over. Others require a 5-year distribution and it's over. No
And
stretching
it
those.
doesn't matter. Either way,
Right.
it's pretty ugly.
Now, that's one of the nice things about an IRA because an IRA can always be stretched if it's done correctly.
Well, as long as the custodian is willing to do it, but unfortunately, almost none of them will go on the record and say, we will do it and we promise to do it under an
Right.
enforceable fiduciary
Well,
contract.
A stretch IRA is not an investment product of any kind. It's a process.
It's not even an IRA.
I know, it's
just
simply a process of taking minimum required
It's a
distribution.
non-default schedule
Right.
that is required of nobody. And that's the
Absolutely.
problem. But the real trick is, or the real challenge is that when large sums of money get inherited, IRA monies get inherited, the standard withholding is 20% federal and nothing for the state.
Correct.
And if you're inheriting a large IRA, it's a pretty good bet that there's still some taxes
Well,
that are
it's going to push your tax rate to 25%
or
in almost every
28
case.
or
Yep, could.
I mean, look, we're working with a client that was dealing with 7 figures of IRA, and we were figuring that was going to be
Ooh.
39.6.
Yep.
Um,
Plus the maximum state.
oh yeah,
Right.
plus the maximum state rate, and that's the challenge: is that the kids see the 20% come out, and after they settle down and accept that that was their tax load, then they go and they
And of
spend
course,
it.
once it's distributed, you can't put it back in the box.
No, you can't. and so this is where, and I've had CPAs tell me about kids coming in tears because how are we going to pay the tax load on
Well,
this inherited
sometimes they've
IRA?
already spent it all and it's gone, and they
Right.
don't have the money to pay the tax.
Well, I'm fond of suggesting that everybody that gets inherited money buys exactly the same thing, stuff.
Stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. Well, it is important for parents to know that that there are a couple different ways that they can leave their IRAs that allow or mandate actually a stretch for their children. Sometimes that's really important because they'll have a child that's either a spendthrift or they may have an alcohol or drug addiction or something along those lines where the parents really don't want them to get their hands on a lot of money at one time. And as you know, one way is with a trust agreement,
Right.
which we call an IRA trust. And then there's another way too that a lot of folks don't know about.
Right, which is with custodial beneficiary designations from a very limited number of carriers that actually offer it. It is a trust. It's just being administered by the financial institution as a third-party fiduciary custodian.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In other words, it's a fiduciary contract with a
Correct.
certain limited group of companies that will stretch those IRAs for your family.
and the neat part about that is that the parents or the grandparents or whoever, the IRA owners, they actually get the right to specify that this is the only choice that the heirs can do. It's not, they can continue
Right.
to control the monies from beyond the grave.
Okay, Mike, what's our money secret for the week?
I think, unfortunately, the money secret on this is that if you have an IRA and you want it to be of maximum benefit to you and to your kids, you need to pick up the phone and you need to call us. This is not something for do-it-yourselfers. It's complicated and the choices are just too great.
Well, for many folks, and this is part of the secret, for some folks, it's wise to take more than minimum required distributions. but it depends on your circumstances.
And that is the catch. That's the $64,000 question, though, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
You've got to know what the choices
That's
are.
why having good professional advice makes a huge difference.
So we're tooting our horns a little bit, but I think that it's important. So I guess, Bill, the bottom line is that this is a case where people really do need to give us a call. And by the way, we have a book coming out, Money Secrets with Bill and Mike. And for those of you that call and come on in and give us a chance to chat with you, when we have the book in hand, which will be very soon, you can
It's
get
a
a
great
copy of the
book.
book.
It's a great
right.
book. Look who wrote it.
Yeah, right, I know, exactly.
Well, it does allow us to expand on these topics because there's so much information that we really can't get into these TV
No,
shows.
absolutely. And the truth is that there's a lot there that we can provide. I'm Mike Tove. I have a company called AIN Services. We do financial counsel, and we can be reached at 800-363-2296.
And I'm Bill Alexander, attorney with W.G. Alexander and Associates. Our law firm is for estate planning, asset protection, and elder law. Let me invite you to sign up for our seminars that are the second Wednesday of each month on long-term care and asset protection planning. And let me invite you to my radio show, Asset Protection Today, which airs every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on WPTF 680 AM.
So get a hold of us. We'll help you out. Get a book. And stay tuned for next week's episode of Money Secrets with Bill and Mike. See you
See
then.
you then.